In this episode of Yoga Rebels, we talk about Captain Marvel and why Pokemon are slaves.
So you finally saw Captain Marvel.
I did. It took a very long time. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I've been in grad school and I'm done. So now I can do things like see movies and live in the world amongst the humans.
Yeah. Welcome to the world now. So for everybody watching, we've decided that our time period, it's been more than a month since Captain Marvel came out. So there are gonna be spoilers in this if you haven't seen it. Right. So just fair warning. But it's been a month, so you probably should have seen it. And Avengers comes out. Right. Or is already out by the time this came out. So
yeah, so if you're gonna see the new Avengers, you have to see Captain Marvel so that you know who she even is.
Yeah.
I loved it. I felt the only thing that bummed me out was that it was so limited to just that one movie, and then we go right into the next thing. Like that was my only complaint, was that I wanted a little bit more. Yeah, because she fit all of the criteria that I discussed in one of our episodes. What was the topic about? So we were talking about attachment. We were talking about attachment, and I was talking about how I get attached to women in movies, their characters, and how I need them to be. And Burgundy had actually said, "Have you seen Captain Marvel?"
Right.
I think you'll like it. And she met all of my criteria. So if I had a criteria, like a little checklist for what I so very want in a strong female lead, which they're always, I mean, they should all be strong because we're all strong. People are strong. Right. If you're still standing, you're strong. But she met all of the criteria because she was vulnerable and she was strong. She didn't let a love interest take the movie into 180 and then turn it into something where she's just pining for somebody, because she had a job to do. She had a lot of jobs to do. She was doing a job that in the movie at the time was not really permitted. So she was in the Air Force, and she was not even allowed to be doing the things that she wanted to do. So she had to, in secret, go on these little flight missions. Yeah. To get her time in the air, because women weren't allowed to do that.
I kind of, just in you describing some aspects of Captain Marvel in herself, her name is Carol in the movie, right?
Carol.
Yes. Some of what you just described, I felt, was very similar to even Rey in Force Awakens, where, you know, Finn's the one creating a love interest with her just because he's brand new, he just hopped out of being a stormtrooper. And she's like, I gotta get to Jakku. Yeah. But I like that where it was very refreshing to me. And as somebody had said to me, that really the only quote unquote love interest or sort of romantic interlude was Samuel Jackson's character,
Nick Fury.
Thank you. His name literally just fell out of my head. Was all like woo to Goose when he first met him. And that's literally it.
I loved that so much. I loved him going so silly over a cat.
Yes, because his character, as we've seen him, is a badass with an eye patch and everything. We learn about that.
We find out why.
Right. Yeah. And so it was really cool that, like, the sort of soft, squishy person was Fury.
I loved that. I thought that it balanced things out in a way that's really important, because when I was talking about how I need all of my if it's a superhero or whatever, female characters to be so strong, so powerful, almost over the top, that's not balanced. But showing a male character going over a cat, that's, for one, that's realistic. I mean, you and I can both vouch for that. Like, seeing
Aaron's a sap.
Yes.
He cries at everything.
Just seeing men with a cat or a puppy or some guys are with babies. It's like, that's more realistic, and to me, that's more balanced.
I can't tell you how many pictures I have on my cell phone that Aaron has sent me. Even just yesterday, he sent me this whole slew of pictures of our cats at home.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is with all the cat pictures, dude?
I love it.
Like, you need to go out.
I know. I always love, like, if I'm at work and I get a picture texted me from my husband of our dogs just doing something, I'm like, that's so wonderful. They're so perfect. But I love that we both feel that way.
Yes.
So cats, the great equalizer. We've just solved gender equality.
There we go.
Just throw everyone a cat.
Right. But I loved Captain Marvel. I loved the whole movie. So I think there are a couple different aspects for me. I love her character. I really like Brie Larson. I have to admit, I didn't know who she was.
I didn't either.
I'm sorry. I didn't know ahead of time.
Maybe we should have looked that up before.
She's in stuff.
She's in some stuff. She strikes me as pretty young, so maybe that was why I didn't know who she
But
really
she's
was.
very much like, to me, she's an every woman. You know, like...
Yeah, I would agree with that.
One of the things, and I think I mentioned this in the episode where I brought her up originally, her body type or whatever, like, I feel like that's an attainable thing. I feel like if I wanted to cosplay her,
yeah,
you know, my body would do that. She's athletic. You know, she's not super skinny. She's a regular gal, and she's not, and no offense to like Gal Gadot who plays Wonder Woman.
She's a delight.
I love her, and I love her Wonder Woman.
She's so beautiful. It's like no one can be as beautiful as her.
That's the problem.
When you see her doing anything, it's just like, how was she created?
And she was pregnant during that movie.
Good Lord, how does she walk among us?
I mean, she's Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I mean, I think she actually is Wonder Woman.
I'm pretty sure she is. Yeah, they pretty much cast that perfectly.
Like, sometimes when I see her, I'm like, how does she exist in the same universe as the rest of us?
I know. She's amazing. She's amazing. But so Brie Larson, I felt, was like just like attainable. And I like to see that in the women that I sort of look up to, you know, like we were just talking about Michelle Obama and Beyonce, you know, both curvy women that are very smart, that are unabashedly smart, and they...
So smart, yeah.
You know, I mean, and, you know, like Beyonce, she's just like, I'm a badass, I'm hot, I'm beautiful.
And one of the richest women in the world?
Yeah.
Okay.
But she does a lot of wonderful things with it.
Yeah.
I mean, just really great... role model, and that's what I think about Brie Larson's Captain Marvel. I think she's a great role model.
Wonderful role model. I think when the trolls had all their panties in a bunch about Brie Larson, or bee in their bonnet about her before the movie even came out. I think it comes from a place of fear.
Yeah,
it's the same fear that I think a lot of people who are maybe racist have as well.
Yeah. Because there was a lot of negativity about Black Panther before it came out.
Exactly. So I think when you really get down to that, it tends to come from a place of fear. So somebody had a position of some kind of power or privilege, and seeing things like that makes them feel like there's a part of that could be taken away. And the thing that is so, I think, unique and was so refreshing about this was that she was obviously very strong from powers that she acquired.
Yes.
But she wasn't before that. So she has that kind of Superman-like quality where she does have things about her. She has to kind of realize that she is human, that she isn't awesome at things. They show her in her Air Force training, and she's totally falling off of the ropes, and shows her going through all of these times in her life where she failed at something. She fell really hard, or she didn't get the outcome that she wanted, but she still kept trying and kept moving forward no matter what the circumstance was.
And I think those are important lessons for both sides, well, all genders. Pick your gender, whatever you want. Like, I think that the point is that it doesn't matter if you're male or female. Like, failure, and I'll be honest, like, this is going to sound really shitty, but listen till the end of my statement, though. Like, I don't feel like I've ever failed. I feel like all of the things that have been really hard in my life, I mean, I've fallen down. I've made really bad decisions. I've, all in business and in my personal life and all of that. But I don't see them as failures.
I get you, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, life's been hard. Like, I've had some hard stuff, but I have learned from those things. But I think even more importantly, though, I think as females, so taking those experiences or the things that they were showing of Carol when she fell down, she wasn't, she slipped off the ropes, things like that. But the point was that she got back up. And I think that a lot of times, and as a lot of times as females, we see those kind of things. Like if I fall off the ropes in front of a bunch of men, it's because I was a female. Well, I call BS.
Right.
Because how many men have fallen off those ropes?
Right, exactly.
I mean, and that's the thing is that if you can look past what you think are your weaknesses, because to some extent, you're creating or you're defining for others how they see you. So if you let those things, like if you fall off the ropes and you're like, oh God, I'm just a weak woman or whatever, or a weak man or whatever, then people are going to say, oh, those are the words that he's going to use for himself.
You've given them permission to label you and see you in a certain way. Yeah.
Right. And so I love the fact that then we finally see the whole sequence where she falls down and she gets right back up. Because at first we see her struggle, like we see her from her father's eyes at first, where it's just falling, failure, just a little girl, like all of these things. But then we see the fuller sequence where, all those things, she fell down, she got hurt, she wasn't good at the thing at first or whatever, but she gets back up and she keeps trying and trying and trying.
Right. Yeah. And so then is it really even a failure at that point? If you learn...
I say no.
I agree. If you learn a lesson and then you take that to inform your next decision or inform how you try it again, if you're going to try it again.
Right. And so to circle back and to put this into our sort of yoga topic, we're talking about, it's called Svadhyaya. Svadhyaya. It's one of these really hard Hindu words to say, or Sanskrit words, excuse me. And it means self-study. It loosely means self-study, sort of self-reflection.
Right.
Learning who you are. And arguably, the whole movie of Captain Marvel is this.
Right. Being unafraid to fail is a big part of it.
I think you have to fail to find out who you are.
Yeah, I agree. You have to make some mistakes. If you went through your whole life without making any mistakes, I don't feel like you would really learn anything.
And arguably, I would say if you went through life and didn't make mistakes, it means you didn't challenge yourself and you probably haven't grown. Because if you keep doing things that you will never... I'm going to always do the things that I know I can do well. I mean, where are you going to get in life? I mean, life is about...
Be mediocre forever.
Yes, yeah. Like, I don't ever want to be mediocrity. I don't want to live in that. I like being different and a little strange, and...
I do too.
And we've sort of talked about this as well, like in teaching and things like that, being introverts and learning how to, own our nerdiness and so forth.
Yeah, and then not instead taking that information and then trying to change who we are. So I am an introvert living in very extroverted spaces. So yoga classrooms, I do a lot of workshops in public speaking. I love public speaking. It's really strange. But that just means that I know for myself that when that time is over, I need to take time to decompress.
Yeah.
Or with some of the nerd things, I used to fight it. I fought it because I didn't want to be labeled in a certain way. And then I realized I don't care.
Well, and so,
what difference does it make?
You find, like, the nerdiest nerd person ever.
Yeah.
Who is, like... not wanting to talk to anybody, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, why don't you tell me about your astrophysics or tell me about how the Kindle is very similar to, or the iPad is similar to the tablets on Star Trek.
Yeah.
And let that person like explode, and all of a sudden they're like, and then this is the thing, and then this is the thing.
I love that.
Yeah, you find a nerd who's not talking to you, and then ask them about their thing, and you're just like, oh my God, can you shut up, please?
Like, never mind.
Right. Yes. And that's the thing of, if you know, if you're trying to like learn how to be social or put yourself out there, when you're learning about yourself, think about what your passion is. Because you were just talking about like your job interview and going all nerd and going crazy over the topics that you're passionate about.
I was so confident because I give a shit about some of these topics. So there are more things related to social work and yoga and things like that, but they're things that I am really passionate about.
Yeah.
So I could have just kept talking. There are certain topics that I think I almost need like a warning if you want to talk about them.
Yeah.
The whole Dana Scully thing again, just like, oh goodness, do you want to talk about the X-Files? Do you have
Game on.
6 hours? Where do you want me to start?
And we'll take notes as we're
right. Like I think I should really lead some kind of TED Talk on why the X-Files were important to feminism. But anyway, stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things that I've found about being an introvert, or I don't know, why label it? Whatever. I mean, one of the things that I've learned about myself that I've seen in other people is I really hate small talk.
Oh, God, me too.
I really don't want to talk about the weather.
No. We all see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there are people that I think if you get so wrapped up in pleasantries or trying not to offend people and all this stuff, like, I'm sorry, I've probably offended nearly everybody I've ever come into contact with. I'm pretty sure I've offended them in some way, because what I know about myself is...
I was trying to think of an example, but I can't because our brains are so similar that I'm like, if you said it, I probably wasn't offended because I knew where you were coming from.
Right, and that, and it's like, but, the things that I'm passionate about, I'm probably not very good at putting words to everything. So I just try to find whatever words I can and jam them together to make something that's marginally cohesive. But that's just like an example of how passionate I am about things.
Right.
I just want to talk about it like all day long.
Yeah.
And be immersed in it.
I know. It's so interesting because that's one of... when we talk about all these things, one of the key... diagnostic criteria for autism is that same kind of hyper focus about the thing and the talking about the thing. But honestly, we all have it.
Oh yeah.
I understand that there is a broad spectrum of neurodiversity. And that,
nice.
I love that word.
That is nice.
Neurodiversity is a really good one. So it's always interesting to talk to that because I've worked with a lot of folks with autism, and it's always fun to have conversations with them about their thing because it's usually like something very specific, and a lot of times depending on the age it might be something super nerdy that I am also interested in. So those conversations are always really fun for me. like, oh, you are really into Pokemon? Okay, so you can list every Pokemon that exists and then tell me all these things about it. Like, I love conversations like that.
Well, and that's the kind of person to find, like the Pokemon movie coming out with, what's his name?
With Ryan Reynolds as Pokemon?
I know zero about Pokemon.
That was such a bizarre thing to see and hear at the same time because that was the trailer before Captain Marvel. Going back to that, I was like, what is happening? Why? I just hear Deadpool Pikachu crossover. It was so... I don't know.
Yeah. But I think it's ideal. Like, he's got such a great voice. But
I found myself like cracking up at that, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu is amazing.
But Aaron was telling me, because I think he's probably your age, so he's closer to understand.
Yeah, I think we're the same age.
And probably because he also has a kid. I don't know what his excuse is for knowing Pokemon, but anyway, so he told me that I'd probably be really upset about Pokemon because people like gather all the Pokemans, whatever the hell they are, and they make them fight. And I'm like, oh God. So it's like
dog fighting?
this makes me really sad. Like, are
I
they
never
slaves?
thought of it like that. They are. Good
they
God, because then you have to like capture them when they're done and put them back in the Pokeball. They are slaves. We've discovered something very dark today.
This makes me sad.
So you proponents of Pokemon fighting and slavery enjoy that. Feel bad. I see you. On your phones at the park. You're not looking at the nature.
You're enslaving
Pokemons.
Welcome back. We kind of had a little bit. What you don't realize is that we had this big chaos for like the past hour and a half.
Yeah, we've been gone a minute.
Couldn't find the battery and found out it was right where I left it. So we're back again.
But I got to meet some cats.
Right. Yeah, Lauren got to meet my cats and yeah, there we go. Okay, so moving back to Captain Marvel, which for you guys, it was only like a minute and a half ago.
Right, for us, it's been decades.
It has been decades.
Weathered.
Oh, God. But one of the things that I found I really enjoyed about the movie, and this is where we've sort of been talking about how this is related to self-study or svadhyaya, is she is, we mentioned this a little bit before our commercial break. Almost the whole movie is about her finding out about herself, learning about who she is, and in fact, she learns that she's something opposite than what she was.
Right. So she has to figure out what her identity is. So she's very set in one fixed identity, and that's who she is, and that's what she is, and then she learns that that's not it, and she has to figure out what to do with that information, how to move forward, and she does. She's able to, I think, pretty quickly. I mean, there's some struggle, but she's able to pretty quickly tune in and figure out what she thinks feels right for her to do with this new information.
I would arguably, I don't know if this is a term, but like emotional resilience or like, you know, because you had mentioned that, you know, one aspect of her is her resilience. And I think that,
absolutely.
I mean, that's, we were just talking about this before we started rolling. The idea of when you realize something contradictory to what you've always believed.
Right.
And being able to take a moment and study that thing. Mm-hmm. And without, like, maybe first jumping to conclusions or saying, no, I can't do this, I won't do this. Like, pausing for a moment, examining something from all directions, and then saying, okay, well, this is what it is.
Right. And we all have blind spots, too. So we have a lot of opportunities for that in life as well. So we may see ourselves a certain way and then find out that somebody else sees us another way. And then we have to kind of grapple with the idea that maybe we're not coming across the way that we thought we were, or it could just be ways that we identify or things that we believe in, and then we get new information. We're constantly getting new information about everything. I mean, technology is moving so quickly. With the internet, we have access to all the information almost immediately. So you sometimes have to shift how you think or feel about yourself or about other people. I mean, even now we've talked a lot, even just about like the Me Too, hashtag Me Too. There are plenty of people who, you know, we maybe grew up with and had a certain, you know, mentality about them, and then you find out these things about them, and then you have to think, well, what do I feel about them now? I mean, what are my thoughts? How am I going to navigate with this information? Which that's a little different because it's maybe people you don't know, but sometimes you learn really shocking things about yourself or your past or others, and you have to figure out, well, okay, now that I have this information, how do I move forward while staying true to myself?
That's an interesting point too, because I mean, so thinking about, all right, I mean, I didn't really want to name names, but like Bill Cosby. Yeah. So, you know, growing up, like the Cosby Show, like, I mean, that was my Thursday night with like Cheers and Family Ties and like all these things, and so it's
Different World was on after.
Yeah, and so
at 8:30.
Right, and so does that? It's hard for me because knowing what we know now, does that have to ruin everything back then? I don't think so. I think, for me anyway, I feel like, okay, now I know this information, and that changes what I do, what I say, how I interact with this person or whatever going forward, but it doesn't have to ruin all the stuff back then.
We could completely 1000% trace this back to yoga. Think of all of our roots. All of them. Every yoga lineage leads back to really bad roots.
Yeah. Some pretty shady characters.
There are some really shady people, and I know that when I started doing yoga and then when I was learning how to teach yoga, I didn't know about any of those things. I think some of the more scandalous things hadn't even happened yet.
Or they at least hadn't been talked about.
Or they hadn't been talked about.
Right.
I've read some articles recently about some things that were happening in as far back as the 80s with a lot of the different pioneers of yoga. So how do we take that information? Because I certainly didn't go into yoga knowing about all of these different gurus and teachers who basically created what we're teaching.
Right.
Would I have still continued down this path or not? So that's an interesting thing too. So to realize, like, here's this thing that I teach others about that's a big part of my life, and then having kind of like these different bombs dropped of the roots. Like, how do you move forward with that knowledge and still be true to yourself and make sure everyone else feels safe and welcomed, and that those mistakes aren't repeated?
I think a lot of it, at least in my mind, there are two things that I have to say about that. Number one, I think the biggest challenge for me in making a decision is when there's money involved, meaning, so for example, like Michael Jackson, okay? Now, I wouldn't, if he were still alive, I wouldn't buy his records. I wouldn't buy his albums, because that means that the money would be going to him.
Yeah.
Money going to maybe his family now. I don't know. So that's a challenge for me, is if I know something about the person, I don't want to keep promoting them by paying for their stuff. But on the flip side, though, I think in my mind, the answer is having the open conversations about it.
Right.
So we're talking about Bikram Chowdhury. We're talking about Harvey Weinstein. We're talking about
Patabi Joyce.
Right.
Even Iyengar. There's been a few things that I learned recently about Iyengar that I was shocked by, and you can Google it. We don't need to go into all of that stuff. But there's a lot out there, and it's very easy to find. And even to kind of tie in like nerd stuff and what you said about Michael Jackson, they had an episode in the 90s where there was a man, he was in prison. He was a large white man, but he had the voice of Michael Jackson for whatever reason.
Oh.
Yeah. So they've decided to pull that, pull that from, I guess, the catalog of Simpsons episodes, because they feel like they don't want that to be represented. And a lot of people had a hard time with that. They were like, but it already exists. Why would you do that? Just leave it how it is. And the creators were the ones that made that call. They said that they felt like they didn't want that to be something that was out in the world. Yeah. So that's when it gets really tricky, is when you think, do I go and I take something away that already exists? Like, are we gonna say, okay, so I can never watch Kill Bill again? My dog is named Beatrix Kiddo. Like, what do I do with those thoughts?
Right.
I don't know yet.
Yeah, and like, I love the movie Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin Spacey. I mean,
I know it's very difficult.
Yeah. That's a hard conversation. I don't know.
And there's a lot of self-study that I think that has to go on for each individual about things like this, because I don't think either of us have the answers to these questions. I think a lot of people, depending on your age and your background, will have very specific ways of approaching it. Like, some people will just go straight to ban everything they've ever done. Don't watch the movies, don't listen to the music, don't look at the art, don't do that. Just almost like pretend it never existed, but we can't
Is that realistic?
quite do that. It's so, I suppose we don't have the answers, and that's where your own self-study has to come into play.
Right.
We talked about we were talking about Harry Potter and things like that, and then we talked a little bit about Johnny Depp and thinking about things like that. It's like, how many movies do I love that have Johnny Depp in them? Do I say no more Edward
No more pirates?
Scissorhands ever again. Well, I've really recently watched Edward Scissorhands, and I enjoyed it. So how do I navigate that? And I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a very personal thing. You know, I mean, because if it's something that like triggers you, or every time you're going to see that person, you think about the thing, then that's the answer for you.
Exactly. Right.
But I think it's not fair to judge a person. Like, if I had a very strong opinion about Johnny Depp and knew that you kept watching his movies, it's not my place to judge you for that.
Right.
You know, because that's your choice. And, you know, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hard, there is no one answer.
No.
Is the point. And then you're right. Like, we don't have the answers either.
Yeah, it can get very messy. It can get very difficult. And then also there's the aspect of believing that you are right and having that about a thing. I'm not talking about Johnny Depp anymore, but believing that you are right about a specific thing and then learning that you are wrong, which happens a lot with science. Science is great.
Oh yeah.
We are proven wrong about all kinds of things all the time. Like, and I kind of like when I can say, I just read this study that says this thing that I've been doing or this thing that I think is totally wrong. I weirdly enjoy that. I'm like, sorry guys, that thing that I told you, totally wrong.
Well, I think one of the things recently was Myers-Briggs, right?
Myers-Briggs was, they were kind of like debunking that as a thing. But I don't know. Whenever I read anything about an INFJ,
works for me.
I identify it, but I don't. And I've read other things like Myers-Briggs. It's personality, basically categorizes us all into these different categories of introvert, extrovert, and then all these other things. But when I read the other things, I don't associate with them as much.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe I put that information in my head and identified with it so strongly I can't let go. I don't know.
Well, and I think, you know, being aware of of a person's cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, being able to acknowledge that, I mean, we could probably say, like, let's say Myers-Briggs is just as legit as maybe horoscopes, maybe a little bit extreme, but let's just say that. But if you find answers about yourself, or like, you're like, oh my God, somebody understands me. You know, and again, that goes back to my whole thing with like the Star Wars community. Right. You know?
It is a form. It's definitely a form of self-study and figuring out things about yourself. And even like I was recently reading that we way overestimated the division of like left brain, right brain. How we were telling people that you're more right brain because you are more artistic, or you're more left brain because you're more analytical, more learning. That's not really how the brain works, but. You know, I can think of times in my life when I'm like, looking at a list of right brain traits, left brain traits, and going, oh, wow, I'm so right-brained. I'm so right-brained because this is how I think and this is how I act. Well, knowing now that maybe that wasn't a thing might feel bad, but then at the same time, it was kind of another way of self-study to look through those traits and start to process and go, I do that, or I am like that. It's just, I don't know, it's just another way of self-study, but you have to kind of figure out, you know, without feeling stupid about it, like, oh, I was so wrong. I can never tell anyone that I'm more right-brained again because they will chastise me. Like, who cares? I mean, if I want to say that that's like a really right-brain thing to do,
fine. Yeah, whatever.
I'm just scientifically wrong. Which is fine. Sure. I'll probably be scientifically wrong about everything I ever say, and that's the thing. Everything is always changing and growing and moving, and we can't change that, but we can use it to inform how we think or feel about ourselves or how we interact with other people. So,
and that's what Captain Marvel did.
Yeah.
She learned the truth about herself and embraced it.
She really did, and she really decided once she kind of wrapped her head around it that she still wanted to do the right thing, which I thought was really cool. She wasn't even sure who all of the people involved were, but she knew what she had to do just based on the information she was given, which I thought was really cool. That she was just like, okay, this person was my best friend, so I'm going to approach this person and trust them. That's a huge leap of faith. I think that's what some of that implied to me, is that she was willing to take large leaps of faith for other people because of her knowledge of herself, and
that was a good movie. I need to watch it again because there are a lot of things
too,
and especially with Endgame coming up, gotta get a little bit of better knowledge about her.
I know. I feel like at the very, very end, you get a little piece of what because Marvel always does that. They leave like that last minute to kind of like bridge you into the next thing. But it wasn't, I don't know. I feel like I'm not really clear.
No, there are a lot of things.
I don't think we're supposed to be.
No.
By the time this comes out, we'll know.
I hope so, yeah. I'm excited for Endgame. I really am.
Yeah, because I have theories. I have theories? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's not a spoiler if you're theorizing, but yeah, I have a lot of theories that everything's going to be just fine.
We'll see, or they're all going to die.
Or everybody dies.
Yeah.
Endgame. What could mean anything? Well, but not really.
Sure.
Endgame, but beginning of what?
Right.
It's going to be the feel-good movie of April.
Right.
We don't have a lot else to feel good about. This is all we got.
You're right. Yeah. Take what you can get.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed this, please click like or subscribe and stay tuned. Maybe by this time, we actually have our Patreon page up. I think we should, probably. So go to patreon.com/yogarebels. And I'm going to stop myself right here. I want to give a big shout out to our very first Patreon patron, Jimmy. Thank you so much for your support. Welcome as the very first Yoga Rebels patron. And we'd love to have your support. We won't judge you if you don't.
I might a little, but I will use my self-study of myself to acknowledge that I'm judging you, but I won't tell you.
Self-study of myself. Allow myself to introduce myself. Yeah, we'll have a wonderful day. And so what do we say? Keep the rebellion alive. We'll see you next time.